Imagine, like a massive modern superpower, claiming they were actually founded by a foreign princess, right?
Yeah.
And then using this wild story specifically just to prevent a war.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking this fascinating historical report on the Persid-Ethiopian Nexus to explore the ancient claim that the Persian Empire literally originated in Ethiopia.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really bold claim. And to figure out what was really going on for you, we are cross-referencing Greek mythology, the early ethnographic maps of Herodotus, and then some modern historical synthesis by Dr. Roy Casagrande, plus, some actual modern genomic data.
Right, because we need the hard science too. So let's start with the narrative through line here. Most of us know the Greek myth of Perseus, right? Like he slays Medusa, and on his way home, he stops in the kingdom of Ethiopia to rescue the princess Andromeda.
Exactly, and they get married. But according to the story, their firstborn son, Perses, actually stays behind to inherit the throne.
Right. And then supposedly his descendants eventually migrate east and become the Achaemenid Persian dynasty. Yeah, and that myth wasn't just, poetry, it became actual statecraft. In the 5th century BCE, right during the Greco-Persian Wars, King Xerxes literally weaponized this genealogy.
He used a myth for a war.
He really did. He sent envoys to the Greek city-state of Argos, arguing that since the Persians descended from Perses, they were actually a long-lost branch of the Argive royal family.
Wait, did anyone actually buy this origin story? I mean, crossing from Africa to Iran and then linking it all back to Greece, that seems like a massive stretch. Was it just ancient political spin?
Well, they didn't necessarily believe it as literal history, but it gave them exactly what they needed. I mean, this was ancient realpolitik. Argos really didn't want to fight the massive Persian army anyway, and Xerxes just handed them the perfect face-saving diplomatic loophole.
Oh, so they used this ancient myth as a legitimate excuse to just remain neutral during the war.
Exactly. It was brilliant diplomacy.
That is wild diplomacy by mythology. But for that loophole to work, the geography had to seem at least somewhat plausible to the Greeks, right?
Right. And we have to remember that for the Greeks, Ethiopia wasn't the modern country we know today. Herodotus used the term to broadly mean the land of people with burnt faces.
Okay, so it was almost a broad environmental category, not strict borders.
Yes, and he actually divided this population into two groups. Western Ethiopians in Africa with woolly hair, and Eastern Ethiopians in Asia with straight hair, who actually served in the Persian military.
Wow, okay.
And Dr. Casagrande points out that the Persian Empire operated with this sense of a shared continuous civilization. When the Persians conquered the Iranian plateau or Mesopotamia or Egypt, they were pragmatists. They didn't burn everything down.
Right, they kept things intact.
Yeah, they absorbed the existing Egyptian and Mesopotamian bureaucracies and just kept them running.
It's almost like a corporate merger. Like instead of a hostile takeover where you fire everyone, they just kept the best local managers and, integrated the accounting systems.
That's a great way to look at it. And that integration made the sprawling distances of the empire feel connected. Distant lands weren't totally alien. They were part of the same vast administrative machine.
But let's look at the hard science. If this civilizational link was real, what do hard science and linguistics say about an actual migration from Ethiopia to Iran?
Well, linguistically, this whole connection is basically a Greek misunderstanding. It's a folk etymology.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the native Persian term for their region was Parsa. The Greeks adapted that phonetically into Persis, realized it sounded just like their mythical hero Perses, and just assumed the country was named after him.
Ah, so they reverse engineered their own myth to fit the local name. That's hilarious. But what about the DNA?
Modern genomics shows a huge genetic distance, or FST, between contemporary Iranians and Ethiopians. That entirely rules out any recent massive migration that replaced the Iranian population.
Hold on. If the DNA completely disproves a recent migration, does that make this entire historical connection just a massive geographical misunderstanding by the Greeks?
Well, you'd think so. But the DNA does confirm deep out of Africa roots spanning 50,000 years across the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait. That narrow waterway separating the Horn of Africa from the Arabian Peninsula.
Oh, wow. So the connection is there, just way older.
Exactly. It wasn't a mistake. It was just a different way of organizing reality. The Greeks and Persians used this myth as a shorthand to acknowledge the very real transmission of human culture across the Afro-Eurasian landmass over millennia.
That is so fascinating. And when you look at a map today, we draw these hard lines between Africa, Asia, and Europe. But this deep dive really proves the ancient world saw themselves as functionally interconnected. It challenges you to look past modern continental boundaries to understand how civilizations actually evolve.
It really does, and it leaves us with an incredible lingering question.
Let's hear it.
Well, Herodotus recorded that the Persian king Cambyses II, after conquering Egypt, launched a massive, brutal invasion into the deep African south against a group called the long-lived Macrobians.
Right, which was a complete disaster of a campaign.
It was. And you have to wonder, did the Persians attempt this logistically impossible desert campaign just for standard geopolitical power?
Or did they genuinely believe their own spin? Like,
right.
Were they marching south because they actually believed they were reclaiming their ancient mythological ancestral homeland? Definitely something for you to mull over until next time.